All right, so joining us, we have like Arnav from UPenn today. Before we start, we'll just have a quick introduction so we can get to know you a little better. Could you tell me your school and high school board?
Yeah, so I'm Arnav. I am in TISB. I'm in the IB curriculum right now in grade 11 and 12. So I'm in grade 12 right now. I'm about to graduate soon.
All right, can you tell me your college and year of graduation?
So I'll be going to the Warden School at UPenn, and I'll be part of the class of 2028.
All right, and what is your intended major?
So my degree will be called a Bachelor's of Science in Economics, and UPenn has a system of concentration. So I'll probably be concentrating in finance and entrepreneurship.
Are there any other colleges you applied to?
So since I got an ED, I did have like a list, but obviously it wasn't full-fledged. I did apply, I applied early to USC Marshall and UMich Ross, so mostly business schools as well. But I withdrew my applications after I got an ED. And I also applied to a few schools in the UK as well, again for similar like economics, management kind of majors.
We'll just talk about academics, right? Like TSB has a pretty rigorous IB curriculum. How
Mhm.
challenging was all that for you, and like were there any systems you used to like do it more effectively?
Yeah, so I think my subject combination was another point for me that was a point for me that was very tricky because it was not the easiest of subject combinations. So I had math AEHL, economics HL, and physics HL, and English, French AB, and psychology SL. So I'd say most of my subjects were pretty challenging, some of the more difficult subjects, I'd say. But I think that's kind of the recommendations I got from our school counselors, trying to take subjects that challenge me more, gives like a good demonstration of academic rigor to universities, that kind of thing. Prep for like school exams is most effectively done through past papers, honestly. If IB starts pushing you over and you start backing down, it's very hard to get back into the flow again. And it's much easier to try to be as best as you can from the beginning, like from the first exam you have, and trying to keep with the flow of the entire thing and trying to get through it.
With all that, do you feel like you were able to manage your time and your day effectively?
I think so, yeah. But I will say it's not the easiest of things. I think time management is something will you have to learn, and you have to learn and be improve and do well at to get through IB success. But I think it's definitely doable. You just need to be strong on your time management skills and make sure you're able to organize everything in your life that ways.
And like more on like the external academic side of things, like did you take any like AP courses or like what was standardized testing for you?
Yeah, so I did not take any AP courses. I think my I think recommendations from counselors to me mostly were that if you do take IB courses, you don't per se need to take AP courses. And I think because my IB courses were so varied, there weren't really any AP courses I would have taken because I think again, rather than taking like another second lab science like chemistry or something, I instead chose to take psychology because I found that a lot more interesting and relevant to what I wanted to do in like the field of business. I'd say if I hadn't taken that, maybe I could have as an AP course, but I'd say mainly that. And for standardized testing, I took the SAT and I got a 1550 on the SAT. And I'd say, yeah, honestly, I'd say SAT, my biggest point of advice for the SAT would be trying doing it as early as you can because honestly it's a very annoying test after a while because if you're able to do well in it obviously it's fine but it's one of the most annoying tests because it's not per se a hard test. If you do enough practice tests, you feel like you can get it. But for me, getting the last like 50, 100 points was super annoying. And cracking from that 1470, 1500 to 1550 is like the most annoying part of the entire process. And if you can get that done before IB, like I'd say that would be a big thing. And I think that's something that I personally wasn't able to do. And I feel like if I do it again, I would try to honestly get it done in grade 10 if I could, or even like first semester grade 11 would be a big thing because I think getting that done early is just honestly like a huge pressure off your head. Because the most annoying part with the SAT for me was that it's not the math isn't really hard or isn't really challenging, and it's just still annoying when you make those silly mistakes and lose those 20, 30 points in your tests that you're giving. So it's just not nice to have it with IB and everything else that's going on in your life. So I'd say my biggest one of advice with SAT would be to go early with it. And yeah.
I think you spoke about like managing your time, especially with extracurriculars and stuff like that, right? So, what extracurriculars do you think like really made you stand out?
My entire application kind of revolved around the same concept that I tried to get through different aspects, and I think I can explain that. So my entire approach was looking at purpose-driven management and impact entrepreneurship. And so what that essentially means is the goal is to understand business better and how business works in today's society, but not just business with the goal of profits, but also business with the goal of making an impact in people's lives, and how those two aren't really isolated. And I think that's kind of what most of my applications revolved around. So for me, I had two main projects that I worked on during the process. One was Unstoppables, which was kind of a project where I helped train differently able people, and then presented them to big companies like Amazon and Marico and these big companies, and trying to get them employed. And the second was this other education-based project that I did, which kind of revolved around bringing application-based education to rural India in a language that is accessible to them. So say languages like Hindi or Kannada, and languages that they could understand better, because most of them aren't fluent in English, for example. And those were the two main projects I kind of did. And a few of my essays even revolved around them. And kind of the things and the entire logic here was trying to present my application as, obviously I want to study business because I'm applying to study business at your school, but my approach with business is different. And I think that kind of was very resonant throughout my application. And I'll say that. And I think it's not just my projects that kind of show that through. I think is different, and how I kind of showed that through different part of my applications as well. So for example, I also did a lot of research, a fair amount of research, I'd say, and that research kind of correlated with similarly with what I was doing through my projects. So one of my research papers was about the challenges differently able people face, the economic implications of it, quantifying that, doing some calculations, and kind of bringing the maths and economic sides of things into while still looking at impact. And that kind of brought that aspect together. And then also my internship kind of again looked at entrepreneurship and how there is impact-based entrepreneurship. And so I'd say kind of for me, it was about finding one theme that kind of was the most important to me, and bringing that same theme to different aspects of my application was super important for me. And I think I've seen a lot that go well for a lot of students as well. So if I was advising someone, I would say finding what is the most important thing for you, what are you really passionate about, and then driving that passion through different aspects and different avenues across your entire application just brings a very compelling case for you to an admissions officer, that you're not just doing say for example, you're not just doing social work for the sake of doing social work. Because for me, that was much more important than just like say a tick box in the application. It was kind of my entire thing, and trying to bring that across to different aspects was, I think, where I would have probably been able to stand out compared to other applicants, especially through my extracurriculars.
Apart from all that, I think you touched upon your internship a little bit, right? Can you expand upon that a little bit? Like, where did you end up interning, and like, how did you end up securing that, and what did you end up actually doing there?
I think the biggest point of advice that I got about internships was from a senior of mine. And I think I'd give the same advice to anyone else. I'd say high school internships, in all reality, often end up boiling down to your parents' connections, or if you're lucky, cold emails, but more likely than not, like connections that you can find. And actually, the biggest like problem I've seen with people doing internships, especially for the college apps process, is doing spreadsheet internships, where essentially your goal is to just not do much. You go there 2 weeks, like say 3 weeks of your summer, you just sit there, you shadow people, you just look at what they do. Maybe you do some things in a spreadsheet, and you're basically an intern. You don't do much. And I'd say that's the biggest thing, and colleges can kind of see through that, especially admissions officers can see through the fact that there is no way that this kid can get it like an actual top 4 accounting firm internship on his own merit. And there's also, in a big firm, there's likely less you can actually contribute as a 17-16-year-old, where the colleges know that you have limitations. You're obviously not a very employable person, otherwise you wouldn't be going to college, right? And they know what your limitations are. And so I'd say for me, it was finding an internship where I can actually do something relevant to what I want to, that I want to pursue. And that was kind of entrepreneurship. So I ended up working with this local bakery. It's this bakery chain in South India that runs very effective, South India and Calcutta, and it's called the French Loaf. And it's essentially trying to pioneer bakery style goods. And the biggest challenge they face is they've been a very legacy brand. They're very popular with old people and like say a lot of the older crowd. But the biggest problem they faced was that during the pandemic, their sales very much dipped because they did not adapt very quickly to the online model, say compared to someone like Theobroma, which obviously benefited a fair amount from the pandemic because a lot of youngsters were ordering things from Swiggy, Zomato, while old people were definitely just cutting down on consumption, right? So I'd say for me, where my job came into that internship was actually trying to branch out French Loaf's role towards a more younger audience and trying to pivot their consumer audience to a younger audience. And there was kind of like a very clear stage set for what I could do. Obviously, my job wouldn't have my work wouldn't have been as successful as someone say like a 30-year-old with a lot of industry experience, right? But the point wasn't that. The point was to actually make a meaningful impact, and that's kind of what I tried doing, basically trying to market the brand to like a youth friendly approach, and that kind of worked decently well for the brand. And like over the summer, we spent a fair amount of time at the stores trying to, it's like moving anything from like moving one table here and seeing like the impact of that, or changing like something on the menu, adding like a new trendy cake to the menu and seeing how that goes. And I think the entire process was just, obviously you yourself will learn a lot more about what you actually want to pursue. But other than that, just for the like even for the college application process, you'll actually, the admissions officers will actually be able to see that you actually made some level of impact, like actual quantifiable impact. And I think that's the most important thing, because you will have somewhat like 100 characters to explain your entire internship on the Common App, and it's not easy bringing that. So if you have actual quantifiable, say we were able to increase the footfall by 150%, like that's a big quantifiable impact that you actually had on that company. And that wouldn't happen through a spreadsheet internship where you'd say I shadowed the CEO, right? Like, so I'd say trying to actually have some quantifiability through your internships and actually being able to do something meaningful that still is relevant to what you want to pursue is pretty important. And I'd say that's probably the most important thing for me. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So I'm assuming you did all of this during your summers, right? Of course, managing testing and then your extracurriculars and your internships and all of that. So do you feel like you were able to, maximize your summers well and like manage your time well, or was there any like approach you took towards it, or do you feel like you could have done a better job with that?
Yeah, so what I will say is the summer between 11th and 12th, if you're in IB and you want to apply to colleges, especially the US, that's not a break. Honestly, especially as an international student, it's not a break. It's an absolute scam. You have to work. You have to work like completely as much as you can, as hard as you can throughout that entire break. And that's what I tried to do. That's how like what I tried to do best. And honestly, I thanked myself so much because right after summer break, our school has this massive festival, and then we have our PIE exams. So we have these set of exams that are very important. They're like 35% of our predicted grade, and we need to completely focus on that to as soon as August starts. And because I was able to do a lot of this internship work and get my standardized testing and those things out of the way before, I was able to completely focus on that in like end of July and August and try to do those as well as possible. And then as soon as September rolled around, I was like immediately working on essays and all those things, right? So I'd say if you're able to utilize that summer as best as you can, I'd say like that's probably a big head start for you, and you'll probably thank yourself for it a lot. But obviously, it's also not very easy because motivation will be at an all-time low. You wouldn't have been to school in a month. There's not really any deadlines on your head, so you don't really feel like doing much work, and it's not easy. But I'd say trying to like if you are able to do it as much and push yourself as much as you can in that summer, like you will be super grateful to yourself down the line.
And I think, yeah, a key theme of like your entire application was integrating, everything you did into your essays, right? So how was the entire essay process like for you? Yeah, what approach did you take? What ideas did you choose to write about? And do you feel like you came out with like a good product at the end?
Yeah, so I'd say the essay process is a really tricky process, and I'd say it's perhaps one of the most important parts of your application. And I think people a lot of times take it for granted because obviously people know essays are important, but I don't think they realize how important it is. Like people spend a lot of times on academics, and people spend a lot of time working on every single other part of their application and leave essays for the end. And I don't think that's fair because essays are the only real chance admissions officers get to know the real you. And like I'd say that's there. And I think the most important thing for me was just with the essays was just trying to be as different as you can. Like these are very competitive schools that I applied to, and as an international student, life is definitely much harder. And I'd say trying to be as different as you can and separating yourself from like the other 10,000 Indians and 10,000 like 100,000 Asian students that are applying is really important. And I'd say I tried to do that as best as I could. I'd say specifically if I say my Common App essay, always recommend people to try to be as different and also try to be as personal in your Common App essay. So I did like 7, 8 drafts of my Common App essay over the summer, and I wrote about my social organization, and I came back to it after my exams in September, and I absolutely hated my essay because I realized like after spending time away from that essay, I came back to it and I realized that anyone who's reading this essay is not really getting to know Arnav Pandey. They're getting to know my organization and the work I've done because they know the work you've done, the extracurriculars, your grades, they know everything because they've seen that in your application. So I'd say everyone, like I recommend people to leverage the Common App essay to kind of get to know something about you. And I tried to go as different as I could. Like I think my intro for my Common App essay was something along the lines of how small can a pencil be before I can't grip it anymore. And like I gave this really funny story of like when I was a kid, I used to like make pencils, really use them as small as they could, and then I would stick two pencils like backwards against each other with like a piece of tape and then keep using them. And like it was kind of about how I tried to be a resilient person in a way. It was really like a crazy story. And I'd say if anyone read that first line of my essay and they'd be like, wait, what is this kid talking about? Like, why is he talking about random pencils and stuff? So I'd say again, out of the box is like I'd say very important. And then trying to connect that to bring across the story of who you are is pretty important. I'd say that. And I'd say with supplemental essays, again, I'd say out of the box, again, important. And trying to be as genuine as you can is pretty important because you want to really let the admissions officers know who you are, and staying away from cliches, again, important. Trying to hook the admissions officer in the first line of your essay, again, like whether with the Common App. I'd say I did that with, I think my essay that I'm the most proudest of and my most favorite essay is my Why Wharton essay, which was basically about why do I want to study business, what kind of impact I want to have, and why do I want to study it at Wharton. And my opening line was something along the lines of a closed market ramen cartel was my first introduction to the unique world of entrepreneurship. And it was kind of about how in school there is this essentially a borderline illegal ramen Maggie cartel that runs. And it was kind of along the lines of how that showed me how entrepreneurship works, market competition works, how monopolies work. And it was kind of trying to explain those things in the form of something that's like a really interesting and out of the box example, and trying to find those connections from your life to what you actually want to pursue, I'd say is pretty important. And then I'd say when you're doing supplementals, research is key. Like any kind of research is research. Like research doesn't always have to be going to the website and finding professors you like. It could be like binging like 2 hours of just vlogs about kids and like their days in the life of UPenn. Like I watched way too many of those videos, and just trying to envision yourself in that campus doing the things that those kids are doing. And I'd say that's a perfect recipe on writing a good why essay, because if you can picture yourself there, you can find things you're excited about. I'd say getting in their shoes as students, I'd say is a good idea as well. Yeah, I'd say that's mostly about essays. Yeah.
Cool, cool, cool. Very cool. So I think we're getting close to finishing up here, but like, if you could look back at the entire application process, 9 through 12, and is there any final advice you would give either to yourself or like other people applying right now?
I'd say the main thing would be, I'd say a few things. I think the things I've said, don't be afraid of working hard, because there is no alternative in this entire process. You have to work hard. And that's just the sad reality of it. But I'd say work hard, try finding the joy in working hard. Two, be different. Don't try to copy what everyone else is doing. Don't try to copy what I've done through this process, and don't try to copy what anyone else has done through this process, because it's such an individualistic process. It might work for someone, it might not work for someone else. And I'd say the third thing, honestly, I'd say is having been on the other side of the entire process, so much of it comes down to like random small things, and so much of it is also out of your control. So when the process is over, don't beat yourself up about it if things don't always go your way whenever you're getting decisions back and things like that, because like so much of it is so random. Like maybe the admissions officer was in a bad mood in the morning, or they just ran out of coffee and they were in a bad mood reading your essay and you did not get in. It could be anything as small as that. So honestly, like don't beat yourself up about things that don't go your way. I've seen a lot of kids who are very deserving and the process did not go their way, and even the other way around. So just hope, and there's a fair amount of luck involved in this process. Honestly, I don't know if I did the process again, I might not get in again. So I don't even know what works and what doesn't work that well. But work as hard as you can. Obviously, don't take that as an excuse to not work hard, because you don't want to be on the other side of the process and be like, damn it, I wish if I'd done this one thing better, maybe it would have gone different. You want to do everything you can, but after you've done everything you can, don't beat yourself up about things that don't go your way. And I'd say, yeah, that's mainly it. And I'd say, yeah.